what I want to mention in this video, this because I just ran into this while I'm doing my research here, is how to plan for business success. What are the key steps? Let me change the glasses because I think this is easier on the eyes. Okay, so there you go. I can see better now. So how do you plan for business success and be able to accelerate your growth? And one area that will be extremely helpful is to understand the difference between project and process, and be able to leverage those differences for your advantage. Ultimately, your business is going to be a process. That means it repeats over and over. There's input, you do things with it, and then there's an output. All of your value proposition is going to be process based. All of your sales is process based. That means it's repeated over and over. There's input, there's something done with it, and then there's an output. So that's the basic definition of process. The project, on the other hand, is something that you use to accomplish something within a specific period of time, something very specific and defined, and typically you have defined resources to use on it for that particular project. Although most projects run over all of these three areas, but these are three basic flags or factors or characteristics of a project. So a project has a specific output, specific outcome, a goal. It has a time and it has resources. The process, on the other hand, has input, has work on that input, and then there is something that comes out as there's an output. And so your business, again, your business needs to be a process. Why? Because a process is much less expensive to maintain. It's much less expensive to run and to provide the service. If it's you providing it as a process, as a repeated process, it's a lot less expensive for you. And so you don't want to deal with every order from a customer as a project. Projects are typically more expensive, but we'll talk about the difference between the two from a cost perspective another time. So the point here is that two things. You want the process to be in place, and you want that process to be repeatable. That means you need to make it as simple and as easy as possible for someone just completely completely unaware, doesn't have the training, doesn't have anything. And how long does it take that kind of person to go from zero to normal productivity level? And so this is an indication of how well your process, your business process is defined. Because if it's not well defined, then you bring people on, you give them a chance, they may work, they may not work out, and then you let them go, you bring someone on and you keep on trying. People come in and they're not happy, they leave, and you're constantly having this turnover, which becomes extremely expensive for you. But having the process well established, I don't want to say documented, let's say established first. It's specific steps, specific things to be done. They are done in a particular way. They are well defined, to at least defined in a way that is easy to communicate to someone who's coming on board, that you can say, hey, you do 1, 2, 3, and this is how we do it. So you want that to be in place, and that's critical. How do you do that? And if you're starting a new business, for example, how do you do that? How can you establish an effective process, okay, while you're just now starting out? So if that's the case, what you want to do is codify it, document it, set up a review for the steps, the decisions, the type of things, the activities that you're doing as part of it, and be able to track it and be able to review it. If you don't do that, then you're approaching it in an arbitrary manner. You will get to some point where you're very successful, you look back and you won't know what happened. You won't be able to duplicate that. And conversely, from a failure perspective, if you have failures, you want to be able to learn from them as well. And the codifying process and the documentation will enable you to track what you've done, measure it according to how you want to measure it, and figure out if it's working for you, if it's not working, and what parts of it are not working. So that's important. The way you get to that is by running a project. So you run a project to establish the process. The project itself becomes a little bit more expensive to run, to implement as a project, because it takes a lot more resources, a lot more time as well. It's a new thing being figured out, as opposed to when you get to a process stage or to a process situation, things are already known. They just have to be done the same way they were done before. And so these are really critical concepts to understand. They help you tremendously to be able to delineate the difference between a project, between when you're establishing your process and when you're running your process. These two different activities require different kind of resources, give different kind of approach, different type of documentation, and you learn from them different things for continuous improvement and updating. And so what I wrote here 3 stages that you can imagine using project and process. The first stage is you use a project to create the process. The second stage is you use the process and stabilize it, refine it, make it efficient so it's running at the least cost and the most return possible. And the third stage is the process duplication. And that is when you want to take this process that's working, that's functioning effectively, you can take it and apply it to something else. And that's where the beauty of a process is, that it's almost like you taking a complete functionality or complete, let's say, for example, marketing. You did marketing for something and it was successful. You can take the whole process of the marketing that you did and apply it to something else. Why? Because you have it documented, it has worked, and you can look into it and make the necessary modifications to make it work for this thing. So the duplication is very powerful in business, and having a process in place will enable you to do that. I hope this helped.